everyone, my name is Luna and I'm here to break down everything that happened in episode 6 of the Age of Umbra, the Unforgiving City. This video is brought to you by my patrons, advantage on your next roll to all of these wonderful people, and welcome to new patrons Meatball, Paddy, James, and RL. If you would like to support the channel, you can do so for as little as $2 a month at patreon.com/Luboffin. There is a link in the description. We pick up with the party as they leave behind the ghostly riots of the Drowned Sprawl and face the Ashcall Quarter, a neighbourhood of Amber Reach that once housed many houses and institutions of learning and knowledge. The ruins of the largest building, the Celsian Athenaeum, burns with a sacred pyre at its top ahead of them. They take a moment to examine the piece of armour that Misty found during the riots, and it is called Tyrus's soft armour, with Tyrus being one of the veiled gods.
He's technically the god of protection and hope.
Oh.
It's strange. Just being here in this halcyon domain, and back in the olden times he was looked at as an intimidating figure, but maybe perhaps his presence is far more suited for the times we live in now. I find comfort in shadow, and that was his aesthetic, as the kids say.
Misty, who has come close to death many times, takes the armor. The aftermath of her previous brush with death is apparent, with one of her wings being completely broken off, a physical representation of the fact that Misty now has a scar, which means that she has a permanently crossed out hope slot. They take a short rest before continuing on through the Ashcall Quarter. Matt begins both a consequence and a progress countdown die and is using an environment stat block, although I believe it is a homebrew one because I couldn't find a match for it in the source book based just on sort of the features that he called out. This place is cursed and Adelia is forced to remember her traumatic past.
I remember escaping from my home and I was alone and I had to hide in the tunnels underneath. And it was very scary. I heard stomping above. Things falling from the roof, and I was afraid it was going to get me. And Violet, I couldn't sleep. I don't know how long I was there. Before Screed.
Eventually, after Idol is briefly cut off from the group by a collapsing gazebo until August uses Arcane Gate to teleport him back to the others, the group arrive at the base of the Athenaeum and begin climbing the staircase up. However, they are headed off by a massive 25-foot creature with a cage for a head, chains wrapped all around its body, and a cage embedded in its arm. This is called a Gloam Tower Thrall, and while it is slow, it hits hard, which we see when Adelia is hit for 29 points of damage and restrained. She's forced to use her rune ward and an armor slot to save her from getting downed in just one hit. Not only that, but Matt spends a fear to activate another adversary, a huge demonic entity with a cage in its stomach and souls within the cage screaming and reaching, trying to get out. It's aptly called Terror Gut, and it carries a whip of sharpened vertebrae. Screeve leaps onto the thrall's cage and frees Adelia, while Idol is hit by the Terror Gut but resists being pulled into its cage. However, the Terror Gut has a passive called Terrifying, which means that every time it makes a successful attack, all the PCs within far range lose a hope, and the GM gains a fear. As Misty and Screeve lose a hope, they too remember their past.
I remember being in the tunnels, and I have a memory of being attacked by one of these creatures. And this is a very similar creature, I think, and it brings back a memory of my wandering soul of possibly how I was murdered.
You recall a thrall smaller but similar to this one, spinning its arm out and smashing your small frame against the wall. You feel your bones break as you tumble onto the cold rock. And as your vision begins to go dark, you turn to see your family scream and the statue you've been dragging through the tunnels with you.
I remember the years of abuse taken from Farah, the Ruby Crown, and the Damask Queens, kicking me, cutting me, bruising me, slashing me. treating me like a dog, which is why I've worked so hard to own my pain, be fueled by it. It's mine, not theirs.
So it sounds like we have confirmation that Misty was a member of the family that her current statue form belonged to. I believe from the Session Zero that the family was a noble one, especially as Misty has the highborn community heritage. So who was Misty in this family, and what happened to her other family members? And really intriguingly to me, does she have any living descendants perhaps within Amber Reach? Maybe she'll get to meet some at some point. I don't know how they would recognize her or how she would recognize them, but I think that would be so fun to have that connection between the past and the present. And for Screeve, we learn that he was taken by one of the Damask queens, Farah of the Ruby Crown, who apparently loves practicing the art of long-lasting torture, which explains a lot about Screeve and his demeanor. From the jump, Screeve has always reminded me of Abdurak from Baldur's Gate 3. He's this freaky NPC who worships the god of pain and talks a lot about the power that mastering pain brings. And I think for Screeve, it makes sense that he would want to gain some control over the pain that others have inflicted on him. So, back to the fight, the Gloam Tower Thrall slams into Adelia again, and this time she is downed, forcing Laura to choose, for the first time, a death move.
I'm rolling to see if I...
Okay. Let's do it. Risk it all, Adelia. Roll on the table.
Oh my god.
That was almost it. Oh no.
That was a good roll! That was a really good roll!
Does she get to use her feature? They mostly come out at night. Oh no! What happened?
I should have just blazed it!
The little girl.
As I lay underneath the cage that's just squished me, I'm going to reach down and pick up Violet. And I'm going to look at Screeve next to me. Make sure she's safe. I love you, Screeve. I'm sorry.
Well, it was her first time choosing a death move and her last time as we say goodbye to Adelia. You know, this is kind of callous of me, but I'm glad we actually didn't get too long with her because it was already pretty rough having a 9-year-old fictionally die in this world. If we were any closer to the end of the series and there was like hope of her finding a home and some peace, I think it just would have like completely ruined me. Oh, wait, never mind. Matthew Mercer still managed to ruin me by immediately bringing Adelia back as a shambling zombie, which was bound to happen given the unique mechanic of this campaign frame, Soul Blight, which allows the GM to spend a fear to revive any fallen PC as a shambling zombie or a brawny zombie as the Umbra takes hold of its body. The zombie form of Adelia lurches towards Idol and begins biting him, which felt like a very personal attack from Laura to Travis, but before there is too much time to deal with that, the Terror Gut smashes its fist into August as he flies in the air, and he too is down.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna blaze of glory if I can do this. I can end this fucking fight. I am going to just look at everyone.
You're doing it?
Run! And I'm gonna fly right at the fucking Terror Gut. I'm going to grab onto the rib cage and I'm going to full blast my arcane push. I'm gonna knock the fucker over.
Okay.
And I'm gonna send him down the fucking stairs.
What are the thoughts that go through your mind as you careen towards the stone, clutching the arcana you're about to blast from your hand?
The number of people who have been kind to me after seeing my face is very small, and they are all here. It's not even about the pyre. It's about them. If they continue, good will happen. And this is much longer than I was supposed to live. I was long supposed to be dead, if it weren't for that one. I'm very grateful for nearly having one bonus year of life. Worth it. This is all worth it.
I'm so sad that we didn't get to see more of August. I think he was such an interesting character and his relationship with Misty was so lovely. You know, at least he got to face Mother and defeat her before this sacrifice, which gives some sort of semblance of closure to his story. And, you know, from a gameplay perspective, it's cool that we got to see how Blaze of Glory works. I was a little bit worried that Matt wasn't going to allow it, like it wasn't going to be enough, because I know they are playing a grittier kind of game, but, you know, I think the life of a PC is worth the life of a monster, or well, actually not even a life, but like just enough space for the rest of the group to run. Brixton rushes to Misty with the intention of doing just that, but is stopped short by Screeve, who has been almost non-responsive since the death of Adelia. He looks down at Adelia's zombie form and makes a pretty shocking choice.
I shoulder past the whip. I shoulder past Brixton, and I reach down and I scoop Adelia up and wrap her in close.
Screeve!
We have to go back to the tunnels.
Screeve, no!
We have to go back, and I just start walking with her in arm this way towards that tower
what?
structure.
That's not the way we're going! That's not the way we're going! What?
That's my move.
This was wild, but such a fun and dramatic choice, and it feels perfectly in keeping with what we know of Screeve. You know, it was sort of shocking for us, but not really for him. Like, he is already very unwell, and this obviously sent him over the edge, and from what we've gleaned of their story, it sounds like Screeve and Adelia really saved each other and kept each other going, and so there's just no way that Screeve would leave Adelia behind, regardless of what happened to her. Screeve begins to walk away with Adelia biting into his neck, but he doesn't even seem to feel it or acknowledge it. In an attempt to help, Snyx uses his scepter to destroy Adelia's zombie form, hoping to snap Screeve out of it. However, Screeve looks back at him with such an intense hatred before disappearing into the shadows with his best friend's body. With not much time to deliberate, the remaining PCs prepare to run, but not before Misty and Brixton put August out of his misery.
I just sort of grab his face, and even though he's twitching, I kiss his forehead. And I say, I'm sorry, but I want to set you free. You can't live here like this.
Brixton just kind of goes up and she kind of grabs the back of his, like the nape of his neck, and just kind of buries it in her chest plate to give that protection from any type of bite. And she whispers a small prayer to Aratu and takes her blade.
Says, many will live for your sacrifice here today. Thank you.
And I'm just going to slowly plunge it right into the back of his neck.
I'm really glad they did that. You know, it would have been awful to have left him in that zombie form. Brixton throws August's body over her shoulder. Mainly, it sounds like to preserve the really cool armor that he's wearing, but also so they can try and give him a proper burial, and the group hightail it out of there. Rushing up the staircase pursued by the Terrorgut, they arrive at the Celsian Athenium walls, which are manned by guards. They, of course, do not want to open the gates as they are suspicious of strangers, just as they were in Volkuru, but Brixton calls out as a pyre keeper and begs for them to open the gates, assisted by Idol.
I'm going to use my dedicated Orderborn ability to use one of my values, one of my tenets, to help with this presence roll, which I haven't used this one yet. No one dies alone in the dark. So as I shout to them, please, it is your duty. Protect us from the darkness. We don't want to die like this.
I will spend a hope to use one of my experiences, lending aid unnoticed, and I will, at your feet, sort of cast a little divine light so that there's this like underlighting of divine light underneath you as you shout out.
All right,
like
so you're
lighting
giving
up
advantage to this by helping?
For the the presence. Yeah.
And it just kind of highlights. It's almost like underlighting underneath of like my pyre keeper robes, so that like it illuminates them and gives further credence to my claim of being a part of the pyre, to my vestments.
You hear the voices above the wall go, "Did you see that? She carries the gift. Let them in, let them in."
Unlike Volkuru, many people here are thrilled to see signs of divine magic, and as the group are brought into the gates, people begin to crowd Brixton, asking for miracles and healings and blessings from the old gods. Idol, who has clearly seen situations like this before, intervenes and asks everyone to give her space. He clearly recognizes it as kind of a dangerous situation. And Misty, who has disguised herself as a human, plays a calming song using her illusion magic to conjure a violin. This has a profound effect on the people of this settlement. Some some who may never even have heard music before, which is such a depressing thought. The group are approached by the leader of the settlement, Commander Kieran, who says they are welcome to stay here and recover for a short while and to trade for any goods while they're here. However, they are not allowed to enter the upper levels and they're not allowed to stay permanently. They're shown somewhere to rest in this indoor village, which is built fully inside the ruins of the Celsian Athenaeum with indoor gardens and farming spaces supporting the populace. Idle leans on his Slyborn background and finds a black market dwarven trader, and the group trade in some of their items for improved tier 2 equipment, as well as some health and stamina potions, Varric leaves, which can be consumed to immediately gain 2 hope, and an unstable arcane shard, which is like a holy hand grenade that does 1d20 magic damage when thrown. Idle, who is worried about some people he saw earlier looking at Brixton and her supposed divine magic with disdain, also secures a guard for the group to watch over them while they're here and make sure that no one messes with them. Finally, the group are shown somewhere they can lay August's body to rest, an indoor cemetery and place of remembrance, and Brixton conducts the funeral rites.
Brixton takes a little bit of the soot that is constant on her from her time working the pyres. She just kind of brushes some off that is built up over time off of her vestments. And she takes and she kind of like marks across his forehead. Just a little bit of a blessing from a sacred pyre. This isn't just to August, but also to Adelia. And blessings to Screeve, wherever he may be. Their valiant efforts will be remembered. In the happiness, in the tears, in the good times and the bad. From the sanctity of Desperlock, in the outer reaches beyond. For just because many in our settlement may not know their names, does not mean that their efforts will not be felt. We can only hope for generations to come.
As they end the funeral, a young woman approaches Brixton and asks for help healing her brother. Idle says that he will go, telling the woman that he has a potion to disguise the fact that he's actually the one with the divine powers. She takes him to a tent where her brother lies really unwell, and Idle gives the boy some water, pretending it's a potion while actually healing him with his sparing touch. The boy is immediately improved and thanks Idle, but as Idle turns to leave, the boy snatches out his hand and grabs Idle's arm.
You turn around, and he is sitting up and grabbing your hand, his eyes unblinking, staring into your face. The void will take you. Faceless. The darkness will swallow you whole. She is not to be breached. The angels will consume all that you see. You will be darkness. And he passes out. And that's where we're going to finish this episode.
Why'd you do that to me?
Oh my god!
Well, that is a nice, juicy little cliffhanger to end on. This has to be related to the earlier vision that Idle had when looking in Brixton's mouth of a faceless void. Plus, I think it has to be connected to the Barrow of Blind Repose that they are traveling to. The boy said she is not to be breached. She could be referring to Elia, the heretical saint lying entombed in the Barrow. It was said that her face was the threshold to salvation, and Idle being told he will become faceless sounds like too much of a coincidence. Not only that, but the boy said that angels will consume all that you see, and Elia was blind. I think this vision is alluding to some pretty nasty stuff that they're going to find at the Barrow, and probably some connections to Idle's backstory, which is going to be pretty fun. If you have any juicy theories though, please let me know in the comments. So it seems like we finally got the PC deaths that we've long been expecting, and I wonder how this meets people's expectations of how dark or grim this series should be, and I wonder how much the shortness of these series is also impacting the player's choices with regards to death. You know, it's probably a lot easier to imagine saying goodbye to a character when you know it was always going to be like a short-term thing anyway. I asked last week about how you all felt about the tone of the show, and there was some great insightful comments. It seems like most folks here are pretty happy with the level of darkness versus the amount of like goofing off that the cast do, but I also think that that's because my style of commentary is I like to think pretty even killed. I don't really often attract people who have really like strong, super strong opinions negatively about the show, because I don't really do clickbait like Daggerheart ruins Critical Role or, you know, stuff like that. But like, I mean, I want to be clear that I have no issue with people critiquing the show. And in fact, I think it's actually a really valuable and important part of engaging with art and media, you know, is having a kind of critical lens to view it through sometimes. And sometimes fandoms can really get swept up in just having like complete positivity at all costs. And I honestly think that that's kind of unhelpful. And I think it's fun to think in depth about these things and to, yeah, critique them. But yeah, I think we just sort of developed this kind of more positive community here. And also at this point, I think people who did not enjoy the game or the tone and were like disappointed have probably dropped off. So they're not really watching these videos anymore at this rate. But I wanted to touch on this comment, which says, hold on, let me find it. Okay. I think you can kind of categorize most Critical Role things by putting them in one of those quadrant charts, with one axis being tone, light to dark, and the other being intent, theatrical to casual. Theatrical productions would be like Candela Obscura, Thresher, and Divergence, where the point is the crafting of the story, with the focus being on the performances, place, staying in character, less table talk, crosstalk, etc. In theatrical works, the players show up with the intention of putting on a show, giving great performances, and are hyper aware of the fact that they're building a story. Casual productions would be Wildmount Wildlings, the main campaign, and Age of Umbra. The enjoyment comes from watching friends have fun playing a game, from the delight of seeing the story emerge spontaneously, and from the feeling of camaraderie at the table. It feels like having a board game night with your friends. And I actually think this was such a wonderful insight, and it made me think about the show in a way that I haven't thought about before, so thank you very much. I think that actually explains a lot about why I bounce off of some series versus others, because in some cases I really love the more theatrical stuff. Like, I really loved EXU Calamity, which I think was leaning more towards theatrical. It still had a bit of like goofing off camaraderie vibes, but I also still really love that, you know, game night vibe of the main campaign. And so I think, yeah, when the tone and the presentation are both aligned for me, then I really, really enjoy it. But if there's one or the other that I don't really like, sometimes I can bounce off the series a bit more. But yeah, I just thought that was really a clever way to think about it. And I think for games with the founding cast, we're always going to have that goofy game night energy, because that's where they started, that's what people are used to, and I think they're going to kind of continue that. For me personally, I have enjoyed the level of darkness for this show. I personally don't really love horror, and so I did bounce off Candela pretty quickly. But I think having the moments of levity in Age of Umbra kind of helped me stay engaged. Like, it's honestly probably not a series I would seek out if I wasn't already deep in Critical Role land, because it's just not my vibe. But like, I have really enjoyed seeing the Daggerheart mechanics in a sort of longer game, and I am really, really excited to see how those mechanics translate into Exandria when we get the Bells Hells live show, which is confirmed to be using Daggerheart. So I can't wait to see how they build those characters in this system. Oh, I also want to point out this comment that says the black tongue from last week was some karma for Sam for trying to make Etchi's flesh tongue canonical. That really cracked me up, and that's my headcanon now, even if it's not true. So the big question for me is, are we going to see Screeve again? If the group travel through the territory of the Damask Queens, I wouldn't be surprised if Screeve popped up there, you know, perhaps recaptured by the Queen, or maybe he will stalk Snyx and take revenge for killing zombie Adelia. Realistically, though, we only have 2 episodes left, so it probably depends on how much more story Matt has to cram in. But please put your thoughts about it in the comments, and I want to hear your predictions. Will the group actually be successful and return to Despelok Withered Blessed Branch? Because, you know, it would be pretty grim if they just never even made it back. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far and you haven't already done so, please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you all next week.